Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the EU ASEAN Next Generation Think Tank Dialogue, or ENGAGE. My name is Madeline, and over the next 30 minutes, we will be taking a closer look at connectivity and the potential for achieving greater digital connectivity in ASEAN and beyond. Dao has joined me today to share more about this topic, drawing on his current work on digital diplomacy in ASEAN institutions and member states, as well as on his varied experience with European and Asian actors. Dao, thank you for taking the time to be here today and to share more about your work and interest in ASEAN and EU digital connectivity spaces. You're currently conducting research on the ecosystem and policy analysis of AI technology in ASEAN and the EU with the ENGAGE project. At the same time, you're working at the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences and you're juggling several other collaborations. Could you share more about your work and whether you see any significant crossovers between your current projects?
So hi, Madeline, and also hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Nguyenned Dao, so you can call me Dao, and from Vietnam. So as about my work, so currently I'm doing a postgraduate research fellowship at the Engineering Academy of Peking University, and my research focus on China-EU ASEAN relation. But at the same time, I'm also a researcher at the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences, which is the largest think tank in Vietnam. And so at ENGAGE, I'm in the connectivity research cluster, and my research focus on AI policy ecosystem between ASEAN and also the EU. And at the same time, I am also running a student think tank called Student Think Tank for Europe-Asia Relation, in which we try to bridge the connection between European and also Asia students and young professionals. And I think there's a really interesting crossover here because like so far, all my work have been focusing on either the EU or ASEAN or EU ASEAN relation. So I think that ENGAGE is a very important opportunities for me to really develop myself and also develop my research proposal and also research project.
Thank you for sharing more about you and your work. And I'm just wondering also in our everyday life, since we're exposed to a lot of terms such as digital disruption and digital transformation and digital connectivity. Given our topic today, could you please help us make a bit more sense of these by sharing what you understand as connectivity and what you identify as digital connectivity?
All right. So I think it's a very nice question. So to be honest, digital connectivity is a relatively new field for me, and also I think it's new in Vietnam and so in ASEAN as well. And I have been working on this topic since 2021, so it has been 10 or 11 months from now, and then that's why I chose the connectivity research group. And as for the definition of the digital connectivity, I think that we have different definition, but I will try to make it not really complicated, so our listeners can all understand. So I tend to, because normally when it comes to policy making, the EU and also ASEAN kind of link their master plan and their policy to the United Nations Agenda 2030. So that's why my understanding of digital connectivity is also mainly based on the definition of the United Nations on digital connectivity. So they kind of summarize that digital connectivity include wireless and also satellite technologies, and it's the utilities of the 21st century, and it drives all aspects. For example, smart future cities, and also it embrace all the key components of economies and society nowadays. And digital connectivity, I think I should mention that is also a very important tool in the context of COVID-19 response and recovery, especially in Southeast Asia, because it enables remote working, remote learning, e-commerce, and also critical communications, such as Zoom. And so that is my simple digital connectivity understanding. And another point I want to address is I think it's really important for ASEAN, because ASEAN is the fastest growing internet market in the world. And I think that based on the research in 2019, we have over 125,000 new users coming to internet every day in ASEAN country. So that's why it's very important digital connectivity is very important to ASEAN, and that's why I'm interested in this topic as well.
Thank you for shedding a bit more light and for educating us a bit more. I'm also wondering if you could share what you consider to be the defining elements or the focal points of the digital connectivity policies and actions for ASEAN. And are they instrumental in the region's development?
Yeah, so I think it's easier for me to put it in like the context of Southeast Asia. So I think that like lately, I think that like in the past few years, like the ASEAN Secretariat and also other ASEAN countries, like they really acknowledge the potential of digital connectivity and also the black box. So that's why ASEAN countries had laid out like 4 important policy frameworks, namely the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint 2025, Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity, the ASEAN Framework Agreement, and most importantly, the ASEAN Digital Master Plan 2025. That's why when it comes to the main pillars of digital connectivity in the context of ASEAN, so I think that it includes first of all, like they mentioned about the recovers from like COVID-19 for ASEAN. So it's kind of like the desired outcome for digital connectivity. And the second one is infrastructure. So infrastructure is like the foundation of any connectivity. That's why like a quality and also coverage and also inclusion of fixed and mobile broadband infrastructure across like 10 ASEAN members is also really important. And so the next thing that I should mention is the delivery of trusted digital services and also the prevention of consumer harm. So actually this one is related to business, but it also related to cybersecurity. That's why it is very, very important. And I think the next pillar is related to the economy. So we need to ensure a sustainable competitive market for supply of digital services. So I think it's related to supply chain. And I believe that one of the EANGAGE research group also focus on this topic as well. And if I could mention on one of the most important pillars, it is like the digital inclusive society in ASEAN, because as you know that like there's a huge development gap between like 10 ASEAN countries, and like the digitalization process in 10 countries are not really like synchronized. I think that like many people, including me, call it a digital divide. So that's why, for example, like in Cambodia or Laos or Myanmar, until like 2019, there's like less than 50% of the population use the internet, while in Singapore or Thailand or Malaysia, which are like a little bit more developed country, so they have like 80% of the population can use and access to the internet. So that's why it is like a general overview about digitalization in ASEAN.
And in your experience, do you think that maybe some opportunities have been harnessed and they have been fully experienced, whereas others really haven't had their full potential unleashed? Because I heard you talk about infrastructure and about prevention of consumer harm and digital divide. Are these maybe areas that still haven't had enough attention?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because I think that like the ASEAN countries and ASEAN Secretariat, I think it just like in the beginning of really trying to boosting multi-digital connectivity across the region instead of just focusing on the national policy in like their country. So I think in general, there are like some countries in Southeast Asia have been working really hard to boost the digitalization process. So particularly Singapore and Vietnam. So for example, like at the 30th Party Congress of my country this year, so Vietnamese government concluded that Vietnam would facilitate the digitalization and also digital diplomacy. So also like between Vietnamese government and Singapore government, they also negotiate on digital partnership, and they examine the potential for developing a bilateral digital economy agreement. So that's why like they try to embrace a different sector, for example, supply chain, e-commerce, telecommunication, and also like even the cybersecurity. And I think that it kind of paves the way for other ASEAN countries, for example, like Indonesia, Malaysia, or Thailand, or even like the Philippines. And I think that it is really crucial to achieve the main goal of ASEAN Digital Master Plan by 2025. And the main goal is to strengthen the digital collaboration among regional nations during the 2021 and 2025 period to turn ASEAN into leading digitally connected community. But I also agree with you that like there are so many challenges for us. And then like for now, I think it is also because of COVID-19 that we realize the importance of digital connectivity, but also like hinder the development of regional digital connectivity. Many projects have been postponed because of the COVID-19. So that's why I think like we still have a long way to go.
You've mentioned quite a bit about intra-regional connectivity and inter-regional, and I'm wondering if there's also maybe a convergence area between EU and ASEAN opportunities that have been harnessed and opportunities that perhaps need more attention as well.
Yeah, so I think that like currently, like the main players in Southeast Asia when it comes to digital connectivity, China, of course, the United States, Japan as a traditional sponsor for infrastructure and digital projects in Southeast Asia, and also Germany. So that's why I think that these are the main country. But like lately, I think that like when I study in Europe, I think that like the European Union and especially the European Commission and the European Parliament try to adjust their focus. And also like I think their policy kind of move this a little bit. So that's why they have the European Union, EU, the EU Asia connectivity strategy, in which ASEAN is identified as a really important, is a key partner in Asia as well. I think that in terms of the opportunities between Vietnam and also like between like ASEAN in general and also the EU. So there are four main pillars for digital cooperation between two sides, and I think that like this brings many opportunities for both ASEAN and Vietnam, and especially for ASEAN, because we kind of lag behind when it comes to the digitalization process. The first one is to increase the access to digital services. So this is strongly related to the problem that I mentioned before, that there are an inequality in the access to internet and so in access to technology devices. So that's why I think it is the first thing that the European Union really wants to improve in Southeast Asia. The second one is an open, secure, stable, and also peaceful ICT environment. The third one is consumer and personal data protection. So this one is very tricky because I think different countries have different law on data protection and cybersecurity law. But I think it's a very important sector or important area of cooperation, because currently like we have witnessed like many data theft or like data leaks. So that's why data protection is very important. And the last one is the investment in digital infrastructure. So I think that we all know that currently China is a very active player, investor in Southeast Asia, especially when it comes to 5G network and Huawei. So I think Vietnam is like the only country that hasn't really signed or haven't like that refused like the 5G deployment in the country. That's why I think it's also an interesting topic that I will look into in the future if I want to focus more on digital connectivity.
That was quite a lot that you've shared with us, but I'd like you to help us zoom in on some of these developmental gaps or maybe maximization opportunities. And can you see what the implications would be of failing to meaningfully address a few, and which ones would these be, as in which ones are the immediate areas to be addressed?
So I think, as I mentioned, like, so personally, I think that like the data protection and cybersecurity is like the most important issue right now because it's related to security of a country. currently, I remember that between ASEAN and the EU, we have the EU-ASEAN Dialogue on ASEAN Digital Index. So this is like a kind of instrument or a policy tools to measure the progress and the impacts of the digitalization progress on the society and also on each economy as well. And then like different experts from different countries and so the government try to work with each other to address the data protection issues. So how to improve the privacy regulation, cybersecurity, and also cross-border data flows, like more important. And the next thing that I think is also equally important is the smart city. So as you know, like I think almost all like ASEAN countries now are trying to industrialize like everything. There are some industrialized countries in ASEAN already, but the majority they are also still in the industrialization process. So that's why smart city is a very important. And I think that like the EU and ASEAN are trying to focusing on improving the ASEAN smart city network, and so the ASEAN sustainable urbanization strategy or the smart green ASEAN cities program. So I think these are the two things that I think it will have like the immediate effects on the digital connectivity. And the last one is infrastructure. So I think that like making sure that ASEAN has like different options when it comes to the investment on digital infrastructure. For example, the 5G network will be really important. And I think that the EU can play a very important role here when it comes to the infrastructure, because the EU has the financial capacity, and it also has a technology and also expert to do that. So that's why I think these are the three main things that I want to mention.
So if I were to ask you differently, if these three areas, let's say, are not meaningfully addressed, would that mean that the implications are they can't really stay connected? ASEAN?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. So first of all, I think in terms of infrastructure, I think yes, because infrastructure, as I said, is a foundation of digital connectivity. And currently, like I think, for example, for my country, Vietnam, so we are trying to have to deploy like, different like infrastructure based on our company, also based on other companies, for example, Ericsson, when it comes to 5G deployment instrument. So that's why infrastructure is very important. And if we don't really have like an equal infrastructure development between different ASEAN countries, for example, like for countries like Laos or Cambodia or Myanmar, or even like my country, that it could be pretty hard for us, like for ASEAN countries, to become more connected when it comes to digitalization. But like I think that the data protection and cybersecurity or the smart city network are important, but it's not important as important as the infrastructure development.
Thank you for clarifying that. From what I've been reading, I understand that basically infrastructure project management is an area that still needs a bit more improvement, because although some of the policies are aligned, there are still issues in operationalizing and implementing these projects. Do you have any thoughts on maybe whether these initiatives have been expedited or improved by the onset of COVID-19? Quite a few things have managed to move faster or better. Would infrastructure be one of them?
So I think that like as for infrastructure, I think that I can take BRI like Bell initiative, for example. So many Bell initiatives have been suspended or like postponed because of the COVID-19. Basically, like we don't really have any human resources and so capacity to build like different infrastructure, for example, railways, like ports or like something similar like that. And also secondly, country, like I think right now they focus more on domestic recovery rather than like investment. So that's why I think it's a similar problem in the EU as well. Like because like they kind of, I think that like the policymakers tend to have to focus on the domestic recovery first before helping other countries to move towards the digitalization. So that's why I think it's a really big challenge, and so a big challenge for like the digital connectivity in ASEAN. But also, like as I said, that like the COVID-19 pandemic is kind of like an alarm for all countries to realize the importance of digitalization and also digital services and technology. Because without digitalization, I think it's really hard for us to connect and also to run everything smoothly as it is. For example, like Zoom, like right now. So if we don't know how to use Zoom, or like for example, people in like a rural area or like from a remote area or less developed area, they don't have access to internet, or like they don't have like the technological devices, for example, computers or like even phone or tablet, then it's pretty hard for us to stay connected. So that's why I think it's kind of a two side of the coins when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you for sharing that. And since you've brought up digitalization and digital services, we seem to find EU and ASEAN engaged in this harmonization of standards and in the business applications of digital services. Are there other areas of digital connectivity that you believe are indispensable for advancing the EU-ASEAN strategic partnership?
I think it's a very tricky question to answer, because I think that like there are so many important like areas that we need to focus on. But I think first of all, I think e-commerce, because e-commerce is play the key role in terms of developing the country right now. And for example, from a country, e-commerce is a very important pillar in the economy. And even like when it comes to the EU-Vietnam FTA or EVFTA, so like we kind of agree that like in order to spurring the digital economy and also digital transformation in Vietnam, the e-commerce and maybe like supply chain will be like one of the key areas that we need to focus on. And other than that, as I mentioned, digital infrastructure is also really critical to the development of the EU-ASEAN cooperation.
I understand that we don't have much time left, so perhaps I'm going to ask you if there's anything else that you would like to share with our viewers. Maybe now towards the end, you can share more about your work with the think tank that you've mentioned earlier on as a teaser.
Yep. So I think I have three things to mention. I think that like many friends of mine have asked me about like our EANGAGE project, and they are kind of interested in what we do in this project. So I can share a little bit about what I am doing at EANGAGE. So my project focuses on AI policy, AI ecosystem in ASEAN, in the EU. So actually it is an idea of like fellow, like my fellow in the same group. So he kind of focuses on AI policy ecosystem between Japan and the EU. But like for ASEAN, for the case of ASEAN, it is much more challenging than Japan, because like the only country that has a comprehensive strategy on artificial intelligence is Singapore. So it's pretty hard to compare and also like to examine like the AI policy in ASEAN. And also in comparison with the European Union. But we also think that artificial intelligence is the future. So that's why hopefully that like by coming up with some policy recommendation in our paper, then it could be helpful for the policymaker to further develop the AI cooperation and national capacity between European Union and ASEAN. And on the side note, if you are a student or young professional like me, so we have this student think tank for Europe-Asia relation, and in which like KAS is is the main sponsor of our conference. So we also organize several programs in which we invite a world-class speaker to talk with and to discuss directly with young people. For example, like the foreign minister of different countries, director of ASEAN Secretariat, and directors of leading think tanks in Asia and Europe, and so ambassador from the EU. So that's why I think that if you're interested then you can search Steer Think Tank and have a look. And last but not least, thank you, Madeline, for the opportunity to join Engage. I think that I have learned a lot during the past few months, because I think that among like all the participants, that I am one of the youngest. That's why I have learned a lot from other people and from you guys as well. So I'm really excited to work with everyone during the next next year. And if you are the researcher and also interested in research or think tank work, then I think KAS constantly provides opportunity for all the researcher and young professional. So I really recommend KAS for everyone. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your kind words, Dao. We're very happy to hear that this is an opportunity that you're not just taking for enjoyment purposes, but also because it's a meaningful avenue for progressing in your interest. Thank you for sharing your insight and your perspective also today on the potential for achieving greater digital connectivity. As for our viewers, I'd like to ask you to join us again next week, when Phuong An Vu from the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam and her guest will be addressing a security topic. Thank you and have a good weekend.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.